It says right here, a rabbi by the name of Simeon ben Yochai, a second century Tannaitic sage. So that word Tannaitic implying that is this word Tannaism. Tannaism is a group of rabbis whose specialty is to preserve earlier teachings of the prior rabbis. So there are a different group of rabbis whose task was primarily to preserve prior teachings of the rabbis through the corridor of time. But watch what he says right here. Had I been alive when the Holy One, blessed be He, gave mankind the book of Enoch and the book of Adam, I would have endeavored to prevent their dissemination, because not all wise men read them. Here it is, keywords and phrase, with proper attention, and thus extract from them perverted ideas such as lead men astray from the Most High to the worship of strange powers. Now, however, the wise who understand these things keep them secret, and thereby fortify themselves in the service of their master, Rabbi Simeon ben Yochai. A stark and somber warning for all of us. Like I said before, when you guys approached me about this book, I made a few statements and comments, right? This book right here, now you see one of the reasons right here from a rabbi at that, second century at that, why this book should not be taken with a nonchalant attitude or process it with the wrong intent and motive. Watch what he says right here. He would have prevented the distribution and the dissemination of the book of Enoch and the book of Adam. Why? Because some men approach these books with the wrong attitude, attention, and therefore extract from these books perverted ideas. They lead other men away from the Most High God, Hashem, the name God. But if you would have the submission, cooperation, attitude, and spirit with the Most High, you're going to keep these revelation as we unpack them chapter by chapter, verse by verse, thought by thought. You're going to keep them as the secrets, not only to yourself, but you pass it down to your children, to your grandchildren, to those who are willing to embrace them with open mind, open heart, and teachable spirit. So tonight we're going to manage to understand chapter 4 and chapter 5. Keep in mind, 4 and 5 are a part of 1 to 5. 1 to 5 chapters at that are introduction to the whole book. And you're going to see very brilliantly Enoch weave the thought from chapter 1 to chapter 5, preparing your mind and your hearts, and my mind and my heart, for the next group, chapter 6 to 16, the rebellion of the fallen angels.
And again, observe ye the days of summer, how the sun is above the earth over against it. And you seek shade and shelter by reason of the heat of the sun. And the earth also burns with growing heat, and ye shall you and so you cannot tread on the earth or on a rock by reason of its heat.
There we go. Now you see a zooming in of thought. Heaven and earth, four seasons. He zoom in into winter and summer, right? Do you know why he zoom in into winter and summer? That's the first question we need to ask ourselves. Everything in this book is penned down the way it is. When it comes to the English translation, the choice of words may not necessarily match what they have found in the Dead Sea Scroll. The main thought and ideas are the same. Nonetheless, every word, every thought, every verse, there is an intent, there is a motive behind it. So these two words, notice we talk about winter with the trees, right? Because it's much more harder to survive during winters as trees than in the summer, isn't it? So now he's going to zoom into another season, summer. And then he's going to connect later on with sea and rivers. All these three things summer, winter, sea, rivers. He's preparing our mind and our heart for what he's going to tell us in chapter 6 to chapter 16. If you Google out worship of nature, and then you put into it, as you Google it, winter and summer, you're going to come up with a slew of information and revelation down to the corridor of time. Winter and summer solstices are markers for the ancients to know what season they were in, and they associate the change of the seasons with the coming up and going down of the luminaries, stars, moon, sun, and what have you. And they associate those stars, moon, sun, not just what you and I identify them to be. They believe they're representations of gods. So this is where summer and winter become very important. For example, if you want to know why you shouldn't be celebrating Christmas on December 25th, in case you never know about this, I'll share it with you tonight. December 25th actually was the birthday of a Roman god called Sol Invictus. You can Google this out yourself. December 25th was the birthday by the Romans who celebrated on that particular day the birthday of their Roman god called Sol Invictus. If you notice in the first 3 centuries, even to this day, some denomination, Catholic, for example, in their paintings of Jesus, they would have halo surrounding his head. Now that's very revealing. That's how Sol Invictus was depicted back then by its worshippers. Now you know why. That's a pagan practice, right? So it says that here, and again. So he's reminding you and I, don't disconnect this chapter from the prior chapter, neither should we disconnect from chapter 5. What he's doing right here is he's giving you and I a testimony of the faithfulness and obedience of creation. Whatever is up there in the sky, imply in the use of this word, the heaven, whatever is here on earth, and then he zoom in into nature, such as trees that we talked about last Monday night. Now he's going to zoom in on a few things right here. So he's saying, don't forget, keep looking at what I'm sharing with you here with spiritual eyes, not natural, physical eyes. Then he says right here, observe, that's what we just talked about, right? Spiritually discerning, not with our physical, natural eyes. The days of summer, how the sun is above the earth, over against it. What do you notice about this picture, about the sun, when it comes to the ray?
It doesn't look like it has any rays.
You're getting somewhere there, Brian. Did you notice the yellow colors against the reddish backdrop color? This is a picture taken of the sun. What this tells you and I here is the ray of the sun is localized. This is what Enoch meant. The sun is above the earth, over against it.
So basically, you mean it's directed toward the earth.
Not only that, remember I said the book of Enoch is a dangerous book. It's going to challenge your conventional understanding. It's going to challenge your conventional theology and science. So the rays of the suns in the 3 pictures that I show you prove to be localized.
Okay, so are you saying that when different regions look up at the sun, they will see different rays, different, I mean, there's some nights when I'm driving home from work and there's clouds and it just stopped raining. I'll see those rays bursting out of the sky and just give glory to God for. I can see the Lord. It's like He speaks to me through His creation, and maybe someone else doesn't see that. Is that what that means? It's localized.
Okay, let's see what Stephen has to say.
Well, local, it almost like the object is surrounded initially by it. I mean, that's what I get. It's drawn right, almost direct to it, from it, near it.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I'm with Bill kind of like if I see something, I have never seen them until just recently, like the sun coming through the clouds and the rays really be prominent through the clouds, and I'm like, is that just a gift for everybody around me to see if we choose to see it? And it's just
Mm.
a localized gift God is blessing us with, and but it's up to us to see Him in it.
Yeah, others might not see it. Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, if that was the case, then I mean, the rainbow's kind of an offering of the kind of same thing, right? I mean, obviously the covenant, but it's a reminder of who God is with us.
Now, Enoch did not see the sun the way we are told, 93 million miles away. Enoch did not perceive the sun the way we've been told. We've been told that the earth rotates around the sun, right? In Enoch's mind, it's the other way around. Worse yet, Enoch saw the earth as flat disk. The truth of the matter is, you remember this guy by the name of Galileo, the scientist
Yeah.
Galileo, right?
Yes.
Do you know what happened to him?
He got put in jail
Why was he put in jail?
because he went against the thought of the day as far as his scientific beliefs were concerned. He took two lenses, looked up at the sky, and said, "This is what I see." It was completely against the modern scientific thought of the day. So they imprisoned him.
So here's what's very interesting. Prior to Galileo, the church had always believed what Enoch wrote right here. The earth was a flat disk. Enter Galileo, who came up with this idea of heliocentric. The idea of heliocentric is all the planetary rotate around the sun. And because of that, they imprisoned him. Science proved Galileo to be right then and now. Here's the key phrase, to a certain degree. Brian?
So then, what do we do with Copernicus? Because it was his equations that supposedly proved that the Earth revolved around the sun, not the sun around the Earth.
I would challenge everybody here. Proverbs 25:2. It is the glory of the king to search the matter out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we get to that point, I'll give you the biblical verses that prove what Enoch was writing right here and some scientific proof of that. We're living at a time right now where Jesus Christ said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Bill?
This this comes into play. I mean, before that theory was proven, why is it all of mankind, all of the travelers, they were all afraid of falling off the edge of the earth?
Very
You know,
good.
they were all afraid of traveling and falling off the edge. Through generations, this is generation after generation of these people. And we always thought of that growing up as, oh, well, they didn't have signs.
On that note, let's read Jubilees chapter 4, verses 16 to 19. There is something in here that Moses wants you and I to get.
And in the 11th Jubilee, 5:12 to 18 a.m., Jared took to himself a wife, and her name was Baraka, the daughter of Rasujal, the daughter of his father's brother, in the 4th week of the Jubilee, 5:22 a.m. And she bare him a son in the 5th week, in the 4th year of the Jubilee, and he called his name Enoch. And he was first among men that were born on the earth who learnt writing and knowledge and wisdom, and wrote down the signs of heaven according to the order of the months in a book, that men might know the seasons of the years according to the order of their separate months. What verse am I going to? Or I mean,
all the way to 19, I believe.
18? Okay. And he was the first to write a testimony, and he testified to the sons of men among the generations of the earth, and recounted the weeks of the Jubilees, and made known to them the days of the years, and set in order the months, and recounted the Sabbaths of the years as we made them known to him. And what was and what will be, he saw in a vision of his sleep, as it happened to the children of men throughout their generations until the day of judgment. He saw and understood everything, and wrote his testimony, and placed the testimony on earth for all the children of men and for their generations.
There we go. So the two letters AM, it does not mean morning. It means Anno Mundi. Anno Mundi. Anno Mundi basically means this is how they counted the years back then, from the year of zero. That's how they counted the year. Zero symbolizes, represents the year creation was created by God. This is why I said before, even the Hebraic calendar, there is about 1,000 years missing. If you were to compare the Hebraic calendar based on the lunar system at that to this Anno Mundi system that was used during this time, there was a period of 1,000 years missing, and that was intentionally done to deceive humanity. All right. So in this verses right here, Yaret means descending. The idea here is humanity is descending in their conduct, in their behavior, when it comes to their rebellion, disobedience. But notice the mercy and the love and the grace of God. Her wife, the name of the wife of Yaret is Barakah. You don't have to be super spiritual right here. You used to the word is Baruch. Barak means blessing. So she was intended by God to be a blessing, not just for her husband, but for Enoch and the succeeding generation, right? So we know the name of Enoch means my witness. So when it says right here, and he, Enoch, was the first among men that are born on earth who learn writing and knowledge and wisdom, that's a reference to the group of the chapters in this book entitled The Parables, the book of parables. And then when it says right here, signs of heaven according to the order of their months in the book, that's the astronomical part of this book. So far, so good. So in these three verses, Moses is telling you and I, the book of Enoch that you and I are unpacking consists of many different groups of chapters, and the groups themselves have a main thought. In this case, the book of parables, when it comes to what it says right here, knowledge and wisdom, luminary signs in the heaven, that's the astronomical. And then when it says right here, the weeks of Jubilees, this is where the watchers, which is our next topic of study once we finish this chapter 4 and chapter 5. And then when it says right here, he saw in a vision of his sleep, that's the book of the dream and the vision. That's another groupings in this book. If you've read the whole book, you're familiar with what I'm saying and sharing right here. And lastly, when it says right here, throughout their generation until the day of judgment, that's the epistle of Enoch. That's the epistle of Enoch, which is toward the end of this book, right? So far, so good. What is interesting right here, Mary Alice?
I just have a quick question. Is it the translation or is it, so in verse 9, it says Cain had a son, Enoch. And then we're told in verse 16, Seth has a son, Enoch. Is it really, did they both have kids that they named Enoch, or is the translation wrong?
Yeah, it comes down to this word son, right? So when the English translation uses this word son, it does not necessarily mean a son as a boy birthed forth from a parent. It could mean generation. It could mean descendant.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is why when we first started this book, I gave you the diagram from Adam all the way down to Noah, right? So that's what we stand by. That's what we stick by. So sometimes When it comes to word study, this is one of the problem with English translation. A lot of times they don't have the exact translation, so they just use the same English word to imply two, three different ideas, two, three different thoughts. Son, in this case, does not necessarily mean a boy birthed forth from a mother or a parent. It could mean a generation. It could mean descendant. Just as the word father does not necessarily mean a male father. It could mean a figure, spiritual, authoritative figure, right? So what is interesting about this, the name of the wife, Rasuyal, that's actually Arabic. That's not Hebrew. So the root word for this word Rasuyal is Rasul. Now I come from Indonesia, where they speak this Indonesian language. So I'm familiar with this because Indonesian language sounds like Arabic. So Rasul, I'm very familiar with Rasul. As a matter of fact, this word Rasul, translated correctly, it means apostle. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere. Long before the New Testament introduces to you and I the 12 apostles, it is God's intent for Enoch to be the original and initial apostle, one who is sent by God with a message, one who eventually became a witness to the message. What is the message? The book you and I are unpacking right now.
The Enoch thing that Mary Alice was talking about caused me to do some searching because I wasn't sure about it either. Now, I know in some of these things in Genesis, it says like, whatever, we'll say, let me see here. If you're in Genesis
24?
5:19, it says, then Jared lived 800 years after he fathered Enoch, and he fathered other sons and daughters, right? So now, wasn't there two Enochs, and didn't Cain actually have a son Enoch? Because when I did a little research, it said they're referred to as the Enoch that were in his book was referred to as the heavenly Enoch. Have you ever heard that?
Yes, there are two Enochs.
Okay, and
Yes.
then the other one is the earthly Enoch.
Yes. So one, if you want to put it this way, for the sake of simplicity, one is bad, one is good. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Now, Bill?
The genealogy and Jubilees will explain that, and it becomes more clear in Jubilees. But I don't mean to go on a rabbit trail, Paul, but I'm almost done reading Jubilees like slowly. It seems like it's Genesis. Jubilees tells more than Genesis.
Yes.
I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but it's like a Genesis Junior.
It's referred to as that. It's referred to as mini Genesis,
I don't know how else to say it, but it explains so much more from the beginning of time with Enoch and the two Enochs, and it's revealing. That's something I'm going to slow down and wait till you teach us.
So there's also another book. If you're interested, you can Google this out. Most of these books are available in PDF format. It's called the Book of Jasher, Jasher, the Book of Jasher, right? So all these tidbits of information that we're sharing right now, they come from different sources, and it's good for us if you are into it, and even if you're not into it, for the sake of clarity, right? Because we Western mind, see, here's the problem with Western mind. We want everything to be so exact. When it comes to the Eastern mind, remember we talk about this Western mindset versus Eastern mindset. Eastern mindset is about functionality, the big picture. Western mindset is detail. So we're talking about here form and substance. Which is better? Sometimes form is good, other times substance is good, right? So when it comes to all that we're studying right now, because remember, sequentially speaking, Enoch should comes first, then Jubilees, then Genesis. But the way we have it in our English Bible, Enoch and Jubilees are not included. Therefore, all that we have is Genesis. So we're completely lost. enter Enoch, enter Jubilee, enter Jasher, enter the testament of Adam. We're talking about the sun is above, the earth over against it. And you seek shade and shelter by reason of the heat of the sun, and the earth also burns with growing heat. And so you cannot tread on the earth or on a rock by reason of its heat. So, not much in this chapter, but the focus of this chapter that is challenging for you and I right now is this statement: the sun is above the earth, over against it, the earth also burns with growing heat. Winter, summer solstices are two of the markers of the year, seasons, where the ancients would depend on the solstices for their worship of their gods. So I gave you an example of the Roman pagan god called Sol Invictus, Invictus, born on December 25th. This is why also a lot of the so-called Jewish celebration festivals like Hanukkah, right? We're going to talk about that later on. Really is not, according to Enoch, if you want to put it that way, divinely inspired. This is the actual picture, if you want to put it that way. It's called the stone sundial. Sundial. This is how the people in Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, used to tell them what time it was, what season it was, even to what year it was. This is what they use as a marker when it comes to season, when it comes to time, when it comes to even year. The oldest working sun calendar. So these two stones, they're about 5 tons apiece. They're not just regular stones. They are magnesium and calcium combined. So Frank is a retired pharmacist, so he would have a better understanding when it comes to the importance of magnesiums and calcium. They're crystallized at that. It may not look that way to you and I on the picture. This is called sun calendar, which originally was called Adam's calendar. By the way, this was found in South Africa. This was found in South Africa. It's been called, this place right here, the name of the place is Mpumalanga, South Africa. The stones, as I said before, they're about 5 tons in weight. They consisted of magnesium and calcium. They are dolomite. So dolomite is a crystallized form of magnesium and calcium. When we get to the fallen angels and whatever they gave mankind when it comes to the information or revelation that they share, we'll touch a little bit more about crystal, the importance of crystal. But you can Google out that we are at a point right now where even, for example, when it comes to AI, when it comes to transhumanism, when it comes to storing memory, this word crystal becomes very, very important. All that is to say, as I said before, the technology that we have today, put it another way, we're merely catching up with the technology that they had back then. This is how this place in South Africa looked like if you were to fly over it from an airplane. So you see the two big 5-ton stones in the middle. The diameter of this is like about 100 feet. You look at this and you say, Paul, what's the big deal? Are you trying to fool us? But look at the bottom of the picture right there. That's actually a cliff. If you walk over there, you're gone. You're going somewhere. Now, this picture doesn't tell us the whole story, but the next one will. You see how they even had a marker right there? Summer solstice, winter solstice, west, east, north, south. This is how the ancients identify time. They don't need a clock, they don't need a watch. And as precise as you and I are identifying time, today. Do you believe that? Let me show you the modern day version of it. By the way, the structure like this, there is like about another 20,000 of them throughout South and East Africa. And I'm just talking about a continent right there. You're going to find the same structure pretty much throughout the whole wide world. Here's the evidence of it right here. What is that?
Stonehenge.
Stonehenge. But did you notice the sun? Right in the middle. Look at the precision of the erecting of the stones to enable the sun to just come right through it to let them know it was sunrise or sunset. Now, they don't have the technology you and I do, like a watch, like a clock. But think about this for a second, Frank.
Going to say Stonehenge looks like Hebrew letters also.
Very good, Frank. Very good. As a matter of fact, later on, when we share more pictures of ancient structures, Frank is exactly right on. A lot of this structure, watch how these are designed. 2 vertical stone, 1 horizontal stone. You're going to see this pattern repeated again and again and again throughout the whole wide world. And some of the structures do resemble Hebrew letters. When we get to the watcher section, you're going to see the connection very, very clearly. So far, so good. So all this is to help us to understand this phrase. The sun is above the earth, over against it. The earth also burns with growing heat. The idea is Enoch did not see the sun the way we modern humans, if you want to put it that way, see the sun as it relates to the earth, as it relates to the functionalities and what have you.
Observe ye how the trees cover themselves with green leaves and bear fruit. Wherefore give ye heed, and know with regard to all his works, and recognize how he that liveth forever hath made them so. And all his works go on thus from year to year forever, and all the tasks which they accomplish for him, and their tasks change not, but according as God hath ordained, so it is done. So is it done. And behold, how the sea and the rivers in like manner accomplish and change not their tasks from his commandments, but ye have not been steadfast, nor done the commandments of the Lord, but ye have turned away and spoken proud and hard words. With your impure mouths against his greatness, know ye hard-hearted, ye shall find no peace. Therefore shall ye execrate your days, and the years of your life shall perish, and the years of your destruction shall be multiplied in eternal execration, and ye shall find no mercy in those days. Ye shall make your names an eternal execration unto all the righteousness, and by you shall all who curse, and all the sinners and godless shall imprecate by you. And for you, the godless, there shall be a curse, and all these shall rejoice, and there shall be forgiveness of sins, and every mercy and peace and forbearance. There shall be salvation unto them, a godly light, and for all of you sinners there shall be no salvation. But on you all shall abide a curse, but for the elect there shall be light and joy and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. And then there shall be bestowed upon the elect wisdom, and they shall all live and never again sin, either through ungodliness or through pride. But they who are wise shall be humble, and they shall not again transgress, nor shall they sin all the days of their life, nor shall they die of the divine anger or wrath, but they shall complete the number of their days of their life, and their life shall be increased in peace, and the years of their joy shall be multiplied in eternal gladness and peace all the days of their life.
Here we go. Thank you, Sean. So now he's gonna, at the end of this chapter, it's going to become clear to you. What he is telling us about nature, right? Winter, summer, the sun, and now he's going to give us two more of the nature, the sea and the rivers. Now he's going to contrast their obedience, their faithfulness to the group that had been introduced to you and I before in chapter 1, verse 9, that he called the ungodly. Then he's going to contrast this group, the ungodly, with the godly. So it begins the same way. Observe. Observe with your spiritual eyes, not with your spiritual natural eyes, how the trees cover themselves with green leaves and bear fruits. Now, for those that have the Ethiopian Bible, if you read that in chapter 5, verse 1, it's going to read differently.
The Ethiopian Bible set up a lot different. Like what we're reading right now is only chapter 2.
Oh,
It's
okay.
much more extended. It's a different format.
Okay. Did it say all their fruit is for glorious honor?
Yes.
You see right there? So I just share with you right there another proof. Even in the transmission in the English language from the Ethiopian Bible to the book you and I are unpacking, it's already contaminated. Because when it says right here, according to Charles, this book goes by Charles, the guy that interpreted this, right? Ethiopian Bible did not go by Charles. This is why it reads differently. Charles says in verse 1, observe ye how the trees cover themselves with green leaves and bear fruit. According to the Ethiopian Bible, all their fruit is for glorious honor. You see the difference in the emphasis and focus right there? Right? So I just point that out to help us to see that we need to be diligent and vigilant, even in our searching for our own personal edification or group edification. So it says right here, wherefore give ye heed and know with regard to all his works, and recognize how he that liveth forever had made them so. So from chapter 2, verse 1 to chapter 5, verse 4, from chapter 2, verse 1 to chapter 5, verse 4, he's contrasting the orderliness of creation to the disorderliness of the ungodly. That's very important. If creation that cannot speak would so obey God, how much more should humans who've been gifted by God to speak? Mary Alice?
So just in chapter 5, verse 1 through 4, he talks about he, his, him, God, Lord. Is he talking about the same person? Or are we talking about the Trinity here? Are we talking about, because he, his, him are all, it's a capital H. And then he says God, and then at the end of verse 4, he says Lord. So can you clarify who's speaking and who are all those he, his, him, God, Lord?
Yeah, so this we talked a little bit about this when Derek asked the question, right? If Enoch was the original scribe, how is it that somebody compiled this? So this is where you see the discrepancy right here between he. If Enoch wrote this, the word he is a reference to Yahweh, not God, Yahweh or Elohim. That's a better word, actually. So the compiler, then you're going to sense it right here. When the compiler gets into this book and he started putting himself in Enoch's shoes, that's where you're going to see the difference in the pronouns and what have you. But it's not a reference to Trinity, that's for sure. It's not a reference to Trinity, because later on, when he talks about the Son of Man or a Son of Man, at the end of his visitation, if you want to put it that way, or travel to heaven and back, that's when it gets pretty complicated. Because Enoch, you know how you read a book and you watch a movie and suddenly you find yourself in the scene of the book, in the scene of the movie, as if you were the character as if you were the actor or the actress. That's how Enoch found himself amidst his traveling to heaven, amidst him experiencing all the revelation. Suddenly, he saw himself as a son of man, which, by the way, it is also true in the sense that Enoch was to be a type of the Son of Man, who eventually Jesus Christ himself fulfills that role. But that's a great question, Mary Alice. That's a good discernment on your part. So to answer your question, this is Enoch talking about Elohim, Yahweh. The reason I'm using the word Elohim instead of Yahweh is right here in this chapter in particular. Enoch is prepping our mind and our heart to chapter 6 and 16, when he's going to introduce to us this word in the Aramaic Hebrew, Irin, Irin, translated as watchers, fallen angels. What is the big idea? The big idea is angels are part of this word Elohim. Elohim translated correctly is divine counsel. Divine counsel. You see that in the opening of the book of Job. Remember? If you remember the book of Job, how it opens, God was having his divine counsel. It says right there, the angels were present in front of God and Satan. So Elohim, translated correctly, is divine counsel because it's the plural form of the word El, E-L. E-L, translated correctly, means God. Small g, not capital G. So far, so good. Now, it says right here, he that lives forever. That comes straight from Sirach, chapter 18, verse 1. In Sirach, chapter 18, verse 1, if you Google it out, if you have the book, yeah, but I'm going to read it for all of us. Sirach, chapter 18, verse 1 says, the Lord, who lives forever, created the whole universe. So now we have a confirmation that Enoch is not going crazy here. Enoch basically is substantiating what God himself has revealed to another human being named Sirach that he penned down in his book with his name, if you want to put it that way, in chapter 18, verse 1, where he penned it down, the Lord who lives forever created the whole universe. So far, so good. Now he's going to introduce to us in verse 3 something that's very important. You cannot ignore this. He says, behold, pay attention with your spiritual eyes. How the sea, singular, did you catch that? And the rivers, plural, in like manner accomplish and change not their task from his commandments. What is the difference between a sea and a river?
River feeds the sea.
That's true. But when it comes to its essence, when it comes to its characteristic,
The river flowing from God, flowing from the throne, the truth of God.
no, one is fresh water, one is salt water, right? So sea is salt water. Am I right? Rivers are fresh water. Now, we need to connect the mention of these two words, the sea and the rivers. The reason the sea is in singular, as Stephen was sharing right there, the rivers all go right into the sea. The rivers are fresh water. The sea is salt water. What is the symbol of salt in the Bible?
Preserving.
Preservation. Why? In what way does the salt preserve? How can salt preserve? Put it another way.
Keeps things from spoiling, rotting, decaying.
Okay, but what is the characteristic of the salt that enables it to preserve?
It dries out.
Sodium and the calcium.
Right?
Concentration.
Purity, concentration, right? concentration. That's the right word, purity. So salt right here is symbolic of purity. And the reason for that is to preserve, just like we use salt to preserve. So fresh water and salt water, what is the idea? During this time, the ancients, in their worshiping of their gods, they depend on the summer months and the winter months, particularly the summer and the winter solstices. As they were worshiping God, water became a very important element to cleanse them, to purify them, whether fresh water or salt water in particular. They use salt water during this time for rituals because they believe, because of the concentration of the salt. Today, if you are a tourist, you go to Israel, if you go to the Sea of Galilee, close enough to the Dead Sea, you're going to find a lot of tourists floating in the Dead Sea. You know why?
Yes.
Density is high.
The more buoyant.
Concentration of salt is very high.
Because they believe by doing that, they will get the healing. Now you see the connection. Science confirms that today. But back this time, without the science and the technology to confirm that, these people knew the importance of water, especially salt water, when it comes to their worshiping their gods, pagan though it may be, heathen though it may be to you and I, yet they got the idea correctly.
Oh, that is cool.
How do we explain this? Tell me, how do we explain the fact during this time they knew the importance of water when it comes to cleansing, purification, preservation, not just physically speaking, but also spiritually speaking, as it regards to them worshiping the gods. And then they tie the use of water, fresh or salt, with summer solstice, winter solstice. John?
Is it because the watchers told them, or was it an intuitively ingrained thing that they had going on?
Very good, John. You see, I said before, these first 5 chapters, he's preparing your mind and my heart and your heart for the next group of the chapters, the invasion of the fallen angel who unloaded and downloaded to humanity all those revelations, all those information. And when it comes to the technology of it, as I said before, we are now just catching up. We are now just catching up. The sightings of UFO, you can be sure you're going to see more and more and more as the days draw near to end time, because Enoch himself prophesied the return of the watchers. Right? But I want to unpack this word right here. According as God had ordained them. According as God has ordained them. Why is it so difficult? Let me ask everybody here a question. Why is it so difficult for us, modern day Christians, to believe that God can impart knowledge to you and I through his angels, when the Bible itself tells us so? Let me give you 2 verses. Acts chapter 7, verse 53. I'll read it for you guys. I got it all printed out, so to speak. Acts chapter 7, verse 53. I'm reading from King James Version. We have received the law by the disposition of angels. That's from the New Testament. Another one, Galatians chapter 3, verse 19, King James Version. Wherefore, then serveth the law, ? It was added because of transgression till the seed should come to whom the promise was made. And it was ordained by angels in the hand of a mediator. So both Paul and Dr. Luke succinctly tell you and I in the New Testament, God still is unloading, uploading, unleashing, downloading information, revelation through angels the way he is about to Enoch in the succeeding chapters. Mary Alice?
So back to your question, why is it so hard? I would say personally that it's hard because one, the angels that I think about, you know, coming to Mary, and you know, like they had these big unveilings of things, so it has to do with a worthiness thing. And two, I think in our culture we've sort of made everybody who died an angel, and that sort of makes it, what's the word I want to say, you know, it like muddies the water, that it's not my mother in heaven telling me something, or because that's what we believe, though, you know, anybody that dies becomes an angel and they whisper in your ear, as opposed to the divine angels that God created.
I think if we're honest with ourselves, we have this bias in us, don't we? Right? Why is it so easy for us to believe Archangel Gabriel came to Mary, told Mary, you're gonna bear a son, name him Jesus, because he's to save humanity from his sin. We take that story at face value. We never question that story. But when it comes to Enoch telling you and I, or Moses in Genesis chapter 6, there is a group of 200 angels that came down from heaven, had intercourse with women, we had a hard time believing that. How do you justify that
Right.
discrepancy? You follow what I'm saying? Aren't we biased, Bill?
Ignorant instead of bias, I would say.
Ignorance, okay?
I
Right,
mean,
Bill?
focus on those.
The angels who gave the information, was that based upon the person's walk with the Lord, how much they surrendered, how much they called on God for knowledge, and walked in his will on a daily basis and yearned for more information? Or was it randomly who God chose?
It's both. The answer is both, Bill. So you're going to see the pattern in the Old Testament in particular, right? Only a few individuals gifted by God to be able to see angels. Elisha was one of them. If you remember the story, when he was surrounded, his servant, helper, was getting freaked out. Elisha prayed to God to open the servant's eye. God opens the spiritual eyes of the servant. He saw chariots of fire on the top of the hill. On the other hand, it says right here, like Noah found favor with God. So that will be the other part to your answer, to the answer to your questions right there. Right, Sean?
I was just gonna say none of this, none of anything that we read ever, I don't think, phases me as far as like, you know, let me put it this way. I don't think that I don't put any limit on God or how intricate and awesome everything is. You know what I'm saying? So I don't, you know, it doesn't like baffle me in that way or anything, because I say all this stuff is so relatable to me, and it intrigues me because I know that God's behind everything, and I don't limit God. He's big. You know what I mean?
That's a great that's a great definition and summary of this word ordain in verse 2. Brian?
It's just to go along with what, like Marianne, to follow up on that. I also believe too that the human race over centuries and millennia have been conditioned away from the truth. I mean, and it got, and I'm, if you read back in history, men question it, and then it's almost like what Hitler used to do. He tells the big lie, he keeps repeating it, repeating it. Pretty soon society believes it. And they're so far from what the truth actually is, they take it everything at face value. That's not the truth. You know, and that's a problem I had when I studied biology and chemistry in school. You know, I used to ask my teacher, you know, if the electrons flow around the outside of the atom and protons and neutrons are in the middle of the atom, you know, protons are positively charged. According to you guys, the atom should fly apart because like forces repel each other, but it doesn't. And you don't question things like that. I used to always question evolution. Okay, great. So you had all this. But where did the energy come from? Where did the matter come from? You have never answered those questions.
Very good.
And as I started to study more and more scripture, that's what leaned me to go, wait a minute. We've been taught things that are wrong. We've been
Yes.
lied to for centuries.
So the word to summarize what you just shared is conditioning. You and I have been conditioned down to the corridor of time. And a lot of the things we've been conditioned with may not necessarily be the truth. Sean.
I was just going to say, kind of related to what Brian said, that even any scientist can only break things down to a certain level, and then they don't know what it is anymore because it's energy and they cannot explain it. You know what I'm saying? So it's a mystery, and there's always going to be the mystery that no one's going to know, and it's okay. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We don't have to know every single
We
thing.
don't have to know everything at the same time.
Right.
As a matter of fact, imply in the word ordain is God through Isaiah tells you and I. He can only give you and I revelation precept by precept. Because if he's to download all the precepts, we cannot handle it with a finite mind.
Well, your head would explode.
Let me give you an evidence of it, right? So the Dead Sea Scroll were found supposedly in a location called Qumran. Because we've been so conditioned, we say, wow, that's great, thanks be to God. Wait, the word Qumran is Arabic. How on earth Dead Sea Scroll, supposedly written in Hebrew, Aramaic, be found in a territory with an Arabic name? You follow what I'm saying? Let me give you the evidence right here. Let's go to Joshua. Joshua chapter 15, verses 61 and 62. Joshua chapter 15, verses 61 and 62.
In the wilderness, Beth Arabah, Midden, Sakaka, Nibshan, the city of Salt, and Engedi, 6 cities with their villages. Now as for the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the sons of Judah could not drive them out, so the Jebusites live with the sons of Judah in Jerusalem to this day.
So that word Beth Arabah is the actual name of the place identified as Qumran. Now it gets better. Let me show you the proof right here, right? Let me show you the proof.
Plus, it's called the city of Salt, right? So,
Yes, very good observation on your part. So there is a Roman historian, I guess you want to call him, among the many hats he put on. His name is Pliny the Elder. You can Google it out. So in his writings, he wrote exactly right there what I've highlighted. The location of this place called Qumran, and he gives a detailed description. By the way, folks, this is going back centuries ago. Centuries ago. He said, lying below the Essene, believed to be the inhabitants of the place called Qumran, which according to Joshua was Beth Arabah. The word Arabah means, interestingly enough, desert. So Beth Arabah means the house of the desert. Right? So he says right here, lying below the Essenes, the inhabitants of Beth Arabah, was formerly the town of En-Gedi. If you look at the map, it's exactly what he's describing right here. How did he know this thing without compass, modern technology? And he goes on to say, second only to Jerusalem in the fertility of its land and its groves or palm trees, but now, like Jerusalem, a heap of ashes. So he's writing after the fact of the ruin, of the devastation. Next come Masada, a fortress on a rock, itself also not far. Here it is, the Dead Sea. This is the limit of Judea. How on earth can a Gentile Roman historian wrote with such a detail, describing a place today called Qumran, Joshua called Beth Arabah, with the specific of the names of the surrounding towns, En-Gedi, Masada, the Dead Sea. If this is not revelation God gives to this Roman historian, I don't know what is. Watch this. This one is very interesting. Talking about the Essenes. Who were the Essenes? What were they doing in this area called Beth Arabah? Here is a picture. Ruins, archaeological finds of a synagogue of the Essene in the same locality that the Gentile Roman historian Pliny the Elder described to you and I in a locality called Ein Gedi. Ein Gedi. How do we explain this? So who were the Essenes? We used to be, according to what Brian was sharing, conventionally told that the Essenes were like John the Baptist, right? You heard of that before, some of you, that John the Baptist was the Essene. That's far from the truth. Why is that? Because the word Essene, it's actually an Arabic word. Originally, it was an Egyptian word, kasai. Kasai, Andre, you're probably familiar with this. You work with somebody from one of the areas right there. Kasai means secret. Kasai means secret. So in Egypt, they were not known as the Essenes. They were known as the alchemists. Alchemists. Now, the New Testament gives us two names when it comes to this group of people identified in Egypt as alchemists. The New Testament called them sorcerers. That comes from Acts chapter 13. Acts chapter 13, verses 6 and 8. It's the same guy identified with two different names. I have it right here. I'll read it to you. Bar Jesus. Remember? Bar Jesus, otherwise known as Elymas. Elymas. The name Elymas means a sage, a wise man. So right there is the connection. Dr. Luke identified Bar Jesus, son of Jesus. Jesus, Yeshua, Yah is salvation, if you want to go deep beyond the meaning of Jesus right there. So this alchemist, identified by Dr. Luke in Acts chapter 13, verses 6 and 8, is the evidence that John the Baptist cannot be an Essene, because an Essene is none other than an alchemist or a sorcerer. So who is John the Baptist? John the Baptist, if you go to Ezekiel chapter 48, verse 11, we're going to get there when we get to Ezekiel. But right there in the chapter 48, verse 11, there's a mention of a group of priests called Sadok. Sadok, C as in zebra, A-D-O-K. That comes from Ezekiel chapter 48, verse 11. There is a document called the Damascus document. The Damascus document basically says that the Essenes, so-called Essenes, these were the priests of the order of Sadok that David himself had appointed to serve in the temple or the tabernacle. So David was the father of Solomon. So David ordered a group of priests from the line of Sadok. If you Google out Sadok, you're going to go to Chronicle. Something in the Chronicle tells you now his identity and genealogy. So David passed it down to Solomon. Only the priests from the order of Sadok and his descendant could serve in the temple that Solomon built. So you heard of this group of people called the Hasmoneans, the Maccabees?
Maccabees.
Right? The Catholic Bible has 1st and 2nd Maccabees. So the Maccabees were Jews who revolted against the Grecian occupation. But here is the problem. Josephus and Tacitus. Tacitus is another Roman historian and a church father by the name of Origen. So you have Jewish historian by the name of Josephus, you have Roman historian by the name of Tacitus, and you have an early church father by the name of Origen who debunked the claim by the Maccabees, who revolted against Alexander the Great, that Alexander the Great came in, took over the temple, and desecrated the temple. The Maccabees claimed that. The Maccabees were the very group of people who exiled the priests of the order of Zadok, who at one time were living in Bet Arabah. Talking about conventionally being deceived, Sean?
You know what was pretty cool about the Damascus document is the fact that it was found in two places, right? The one what Talmud scholar there found it in 1896 in a synagogue, and it was also found in Cave 4. And they said
Yeah,
it was one of the most important documents ever found. They're
because
important scrolls.
because in that document, among other things that it contained, is the exact details of what a priest should function, how a priest should function. You see what I'm saying? All these other missing books, now you know why they're missing. By the way, I talk about Zadok, right? Zadok was a descendant of Eleazar. Eleazar was the son of Aaron. Aaron was the brother of Moses. Moses appointed Aaron to be the high priest. That comes from 2 Samuel, 2 Samuel chapter 15, verses 24 to 37. You could read that when you have the time. Josephus tells us that the name Hasmonean, that the Maccabees originated, so to speak, because Hasmoneans is a term used to define the descendants of the Maccabees. It comes from the word Kasman. Kasman means wealthy. Why is this important? Because Jesus, in his lifetime, he encountered two groups of people, if you remember, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Hasmoneans were the Sadducees. The Sadducees were the wealthy group of people who were tied politically to the Sanhedrin. These are the group of people that were so close to the Roman government. These are the ones who were behind the scene of the selling off of Jesus, using the Pharisees as the bad guys. The same way the Maccabees, the Hasmoneans lie about Alexander the Great coming into Jerusalem, into the temple built by Solomon, desecrated the temple. According to Josephus, according to Tacitus, according to Origen, that never happened. And they came up with this idea of the celebration of Hanukkah. Remember? What is Hanukkah? Supposedly, when they liberated the people, the oil in the temple burned for 7 days, right? But here is the proof that they lie. So, I'm going to share with you two things right here. The dedication of the first temple, when I talk about the first temple, I'm talking about the one that Solomon built. If I say the second temple, I'm talking about the one that was rebuilt by Herod the Great. So these two temples we need to distinguish. The first temple is a reference to the one that Solomon originally built. The second temple is a reference to Herod the Great. So this celebration called Hanukkah is nothing what the Maccabees or the Hasmoneans made it to be, because historically the dedication for the first temple took place in September, between September 15 to October 15. Hanukkah is celebrated in December. Right, there is a discrepancy. That's the first evidence. The second evidence, the dedication of the temple rebuilt by Herod the Great took place in February 15 to March 15. That's another discrepancy. The proof of the lie that Alexander the Great came in, took over the whole kingdom, if you want to put it that way, city and the temple, and desecrated the temple. Mary Alice?
So it's interesting that about Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is it doesn't match exactly with Christmas, but it follows it. And so Christmas is the birth of Jesus. Hanukkah is something else, and they're really not the time frame.
Now you're talking. It's exactly what Brian was saying early on. We've been duped. We've been conventionally told lie after lie after lie, but we don't bother doing the research. If you look at the celebration of Hanukkah and you tie that back to what we started talking about today, winter solstice. Okay, so we're in the winter months right now, right? When did winter supposedly, according to the Gregorian calendar, begin this year?
November 22nd.
Is it November or is it December?
It's December 21st.
December. Sorry.
Now you see the lie. Winter solstice began this year in December 21st. Hanukkah is celebrated according to the Maccabees, the Hasmoneans, in December. Exact same time, within 3-day period of the difference between the beginning of the winter solstice. We just talked about the fact December 25th is not the actual birthday of Jesus. It's the birthday of the Roman god called Sol Invictus. Brian.
So it's funny that you're talking about this, because I was talking to my cousin last night about Christmas, and she was going on about all the decorations, and I said it's too bad we don't really celebrate it for what we think we celebrate it for. And she's like, well, it doesn't really matter now. And I said, yes, it does. I said, this is how people, countries, communities get overtaken, because you start to believe this little bit of a lie, and then a little bit more and a little bit more. And pretty soon you have no idea why you're celebrating a holiday. And now you're out there buying things and putting up trees and doing all this stuff, and you have no idea why you're doing it. You're just doing it because we've always done it. I said, It's very important to know the truth and to speak the truth about why we celebrate what we celebrate. And we're so far from it. And it's just amazing that we're having this conversation tonight after I had that conversation last night.
Here's what Enoch is telling us in light of what you just shared right there. If the ancients know what time it was, shouldn't we, with all the advance of technology and all the availability of information, Bill?
I shared this with you this week, Paul. I don't understand why we shouldn't just follow the proper calendar, the proper time. Why, like Hanukkah, I will say, there is a rabbi in Albany, and he did say, we celebrate Hanukkah because when Herod raised the second temple, and it's the festival of lights, and it is man-made, and he says the same thing as Christians. If it doesn't matter what date, we're just here to celebrate. It does matter which date. If we change Christmas to September, watch the outrage. Watch the outrage, because people really believe it's historically December 25th. I mean, it's almost a type of ignorance.
It is.
You're not. It's incredible.
But the bigger thing I've always wondered around the birth of Jesus is, does the date matter? Because we should celebrate in our hearts every single day that he was born and what that means to us. So I'm not saying that whether it's December or it's September, I'm just saying we shouldn't be fixated on the date. We should be fixated on what it means. And,
why was it changed then?
What? Right.
I agree with you. But why was it changed?
Oh no,
it's just weird.
It's man-made.
I agree. I agree with you too. But you have to understand too that our eyes are opened. There are people out there whose eyes aren't opened. And if you start to let in a little bit of a lie and a little bit more of a lie and a little bit more, that's how people get pushed away from the truth. The devil just doesn't pop up and say, hey, I'm the devil, follow me. Everybody go, heck no, you're the devil. That's not how it worked. That's how he did it with Eve. He appeared as a shiny thing. He led further and further away.
Here is why we need to be diligent and vigilant. One of the reasons the order of the Sabbath priests were exiled, persecuted, and prosecuted by the Hasmoneans, the descendants of the Maccabees, because they refused to follow the Gregorian calendar. They believe that originally a year consisted of 360 days. That's one of the reasons they were persecuted, prosecuted, and exiled. Let me share with you this about Alexander the Great, so you know I'm not making up a story right here. This is historical writing. It says in 11.331, for Alexander, referring to Alexander the Great, when he saw the multitude at a distance in white garments, while the priest stood clothed in white with white linen, and the high priest in purple and scarlet clothing, with his mitre on his head, having the golden plate whereon the name of God was engraved, he approached by himself, adored that name, first saluted the high priest. Nothing in this historical writing tells you and I there was a confrontation, there was a hostile takeover. It was mutually agreed upon by Alexander the Great, representing the Grecian Empire then, and the high priest representing the Hebrew people. Greece needed money, and Alexander came asking for taxation. The high priest representing the people agreed. Nothing like a confrontation that the Maccabees, the Hasmoneans, have been alluding to or presenting. You follow what I'm saying right here. We need to be doing a due diligent research. Back to this order of the Zadok. If you think that they don't exist, for example, the Zadok as a priest, according to Ezekiel chapter 48, verse 11, when the third temple is rebuilt, God himself saying to Ezekiel, it will be the Zadok priests that will be serving in the third temple. Let me read for you right here, Second Esdras. Second Esdras. If you have it in your Bible there, you can read along from chapter 4, verses 13 to verses 21. This is substantiating what it says in verse 3 right here. And behold, how the sea and the rivers in like manner accomplish and change not their tasks from his commandments. So it says in 2nd Ezra chapter 4, verses 13 to 21, he answered me and said, this is a dialogue between Uriel and Esdra. Uriel is explaining to Esdra, at the same time challenging Esdra about his wisdom, right? So he said, Esdra writing, Uriel answered me and said, I went into a forest, into a plain, and the trees took counsel and said, come, let us go and make war against the sea, that it may depart away from us, from before us, that we may make us more woods. The floods of the sea also in like manner took counsel and said, come, let us go up and subdue the woods in the plain, that there are also we may make us another country. So this is a battle, a contest, a competition between the forest, the wood, and the water, the sea, right? So it says right here, the thought of the wood was in vain, for the fire came and consumed it. The thought of the floods of the sea came likewise to naught, for the sand stood up and stopped them. Now Uriel is asking Esdra in this dialogue. He said, if you were the judge, what decision would you make? That's basically what Uriel was asking Esdra. Of whom would you condemn? Esdra answered, I answered and said, verily, it is foolish thought that they both have devised. For the ground is given unto the wood, and the sea also had his place to bear his floods. So Esdra is answering this hypothetical question by Uriel. Who are you going to judge? What decision will you make in this dispute between the forest and the sea? So Esdra said, I answered and said, verily, it is foolish thought that they both have devised, for the ground is given unto the wood, and the sea also had his place to bear his flood. Then he answered me and said, Uriel answering to Esdra, thou hast given a right judgment, but why judgest thou not thyself also. For like as the ground is given unto the wood, and the sea to his floods, even so they that dwell upon the earth may understand nothing but that which is upon the earth, that he that dwell above the heavens may only understand the things that are above the height of the heavens. So this dialogue is telling you and I, the same way Enoch later on will tell us of all the revelations that the angels and the archangel gave them, is substantiated. That narrative about the angels giving revelation to Enoch is substantiated in the stories, in these 3 verses of 2nd Ezra about Uriel, an archangel, giving revelation to Ezra that substantiate verse 3 in chapter 5. The sea and the rivers. Last Monday, we talked about the forest, didn't we? What is the big idea? Back to this word ordain. Everything that God created, whether the trees in the forest, whether the sea, whether the rivers, whether the summer, whether the winter season, they all have their appointed time and ordained functionality. The big picture Enoch is saying so far right here, up to verse 3 of chapter 5. If this creation can obey God, and yet they don't have a mouth, they don't have a mind, shouldn't you, human being, created in his own image and likeness? This is why he began in verse 4, rebuking the ungodly. Watch what he says right here. But ye have not been steadfast, nor done the commandments of the Lord, but ye have turned away and spoken proud and harsh words with your impure mouths against his greatness. O ye hard-hearted, ye shall find no peace. So, verse 5 and verse 6, if you notice in your book right there, verse 6 is broken down into A and B. Verse 7 is broken down into A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. That's the way Charles, the interpreter, broke it down. And it's going to look different in your Ethiopian Bible. See, this is another thing we need to question when we read stuff like this. Why did he break this down this way? Is it for focus, or did he have an agenda behind it? Nonetheless, what so far right here Enoch is telling you and I in verse 5 and verse 6, you can find it in Psalm 102, verse 9. You can find it in Psalm 102, verse 9.
For I have eaten ashes like bread, and mingled my drink with weeping.
So that's just one of the verses that I gave. Also, Isaiah chapter 65, particularly verses 15 and 16. That Isaiah 65, 15, and 16 are talking about chapter 5. Chapter 5, yes, verse 5 and verse 6. But back to what he says right here in verse 4. The ungodly have not been steadfast. They have not done the commandments of the Lord. They have turned away and spoken proud and harsh words. They have impure mouths. You'll find that in the biblical references where I had Jude chapter 1, verse 15, Psalm chapter 12, verse 4, Daniel chapter 7, verses 11, 14, 23, Revelation chapter 13, verse 5.
I got 4 books in front of me and I can't keep up with what you're researching. This is incredible.
So Galatians 3:19, which was the third one or something that you had up there. I wanted to ask you a couple questions about that.
Yeah, Galatians chapter 3:19. Okay.
All right, so it says, why the law then? It was added on account of the violations having been ordered through the angels. So that would have been the Nephilim, right? The ones who came down, right? To create the Nephilim, is that correct?
You have to wonder, right? Why did Paul say it the way he did?
And then it says, having been ordered through the angels a hand of a mediator. Is the mediator Satan?
No, he's writing about Jesus coming as the seed the seed that is referred to back by Moses in Genesis chapter 3.
Right. Yeah, I got the seed part of it, but the mediator, it said, having been ordered through the angels at the hand of a mediator until the seed would come. I thought that meant that it would abolish whatever he was talking about in the beginning of 19. And maybe I understood that totally wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, so I quoted verse 19 just to show all of us here the idea of God revealing to you and I through an angel is not a new thing. It happened before, it is still happening now. Even Paul, the great apostle, used that verse to convince you and I. Even in his writing, somewhere else he says, right? Don't forget to entertain a stranger, because in doing so, you may be entertaining an angel. You follow what I'm saying? So back to this verse 4, I gave you 4 biblical references right there. When it comes to verses 5 and 6, the most important reference comes out from Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 65. Isaiah chapter 65 from verses 11 to verses 16. It's the same 2 groups of people that Enoch is talking about here in this chapter. The ungodly versus the godly. The ungodly versus the godly. The crux of the rest of these verses in chapter 5 of Enoch simply is this. Just as Isaiah described in chapter 65, verses 11 to 16. I'm going to read for us right here in verse 16 of Isaiah chapter 65. The name of those who forsake God, the ungodly, will be used in an oath of cursing when God's chosen one are casting a curse on some evil person. And the example you can find in Jeremiah chapter 20, verses 20 to 23. If you look it up, it's very clear what Enoch is writing in verse 6, verse 7, when it comes to cursing, it's exactly what Isaiah wrote in chapter 65, verses 16. The only difference is Isaiah did not identify in verse 15 as the godly that Enoch identified in verse 7. So in Enoch, beginning with verse 4 all the way to verse 6, are referencing the ungodly. Beginning in verse 7, Enoch is referencing the godly. Isaiah did not identify the godly in verse 16 of chapter 65. I should say 15. But in verse 16, Isaiah identified them as the ungodly. I'm giving you the biblical references, verses right here. So you know that this book here is very valuable.
Amen.
Why? Because who came first, Enoch or Isaiah?
All right.
Enoch. Who came first, Enoch or Jeremiah? Enoch. So it cannot be that Enoch is quoting from Isaiah or Jeremiah. And back to this word ordained in verse 2. For such a time as this, I always say, what happens on earth is a reflection of what happens in heaven. The exposure of the corruption that's going on in our country right now, that's happening on a natural realm. The same thing is happening in the spiritual realm. You and I, in our search of truth, going through this book is part of the happening of the spiritual realm.
Say that one more time.
The exposure of the corruption that our nation is going through right now, that's happening in the natural realm. The counterpart of it is happening right now in the spiritual realm. You and I, searching the truth, unpacking this book, is part of what's happening in the spiritual realm. What does that mean? It is ordained by God for such a time as this, that you and I are a part of this group going through this exposure. As Brian was talking early on, the conditioning of the Christians by their own Christian churches and denomination.
How awesome is that?
The question you need to ask yourself is, are you willing, like Peter, to step out of the boat and walk on water? Because if you don't, God, what he did with the flood is going to do the same with that boat, with those that refuse to get out and walk on water. He's going to sink that boat, because a boat in the Bible is symbolic of a church, denomination, theological persuasion. You fill in the blanks. What's right here, beginning with verse 7? It gets better. But for the elect, there shall be light and joy and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Who said that?
Jesus.
Jesus.
Jesus said that. Are you convinced now? Who came first? Well, we cannot ask this question to Jesus because he was in the beginning before everything else existed. You follow what I'm saying? But if you go through the rest of these verses right here, I'm going to just run this down. When it says right here, a godly light, all these verses right here in this chapter, chapter 5, you're going to find the biblical references exactly in the notes where I've given you. When it says a goodly, godly light, that's Jesus. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. John chapter 8, verse 12. John chapter 9, verse 5. When it says right here, the elect, there shall be light and grace and peace, that comes from Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. When it says right here, they shall inherit the earth, that comes from Matthew chapter 5, verse 5. They come from David, Psalm 25, verse 13, Psalm 37, verse 9, verse 11, verse 22. The biblical references is unbelievable. I'm going to show you the evidence that the Zadok, as a group of priests, did exist. Here's an archaeological find of one of their communities. What's the bottom picture? What is that?
Is that ox horns?
Looks like ox horn, isn't it? Now you know why in the Old Testament this word horns are always used in the context of a temple, in the context of a place of worship, in the context of a priest serving in his capacity as a priest when it comes to the temple or the tabernacle. You may not see in the Old Testament the exact ox horn like you did see in this picture. But if you look at, for example, the utensils in the tabernacle and in the temple, everything has four corners. Everything has four corners. What is the idea? Just like this section right here at the bottom, a square. Remember, four in the Bible is symbolic of completion of creation. Horn is symbolic of power, protection in this case. So the altar of incense, for example, in the tabernacle and later on in the temple, it is in the shape of a square with four corners. As a matter of fact, if you Google out the pictures of the temple that Solomon built, right, the structure of the temple itself, they have like protruding section on the four corners. What do you think they got this idea? Right here is the evidence. The priests of the order of Zadok have been ordained by God through David to be in charge of anything and everything when it comes to priestly function, when it comes to worship of God, when it comes to even the jotting down, preserving of all the theologies and teachings and what have you. As I said before, I want to show you. Here goes, Bill. This is a 70-70 map by a guy named Rigobert Bonnet, who lived between 1727 and 1794. He was the one that drew this map. Notice it says right there, Bet Arabah. It's not Qumran. It's Bet Arabah. Why did they change the name to Qumran? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. I share with you some of the reasons, historical at that, when it comes to the Hasmoneans, the Maccabeans. They claim that Alexander the Great came, ransacked the city, ransacked the kingdom, ransacked the temple. That's not the truth. Josephus, Tacitus, Origen, they all debunked that. Here is the proof. Qumran is not the original name. Joshua identified in chapter 15 as Beth Arabah.
Paul, you finding this information, how come other historians haven't disputed this? Why isn't this disputed? It makes no sense. People are sitting on their spiritual hands, their physical and spiritual hands, by not bringing this stuff up.
There are people that are bringing this up. There are. But let me give you some challenging thought right here. How many here like Albert Einstein? What if I were to tell you that Albert Einstein was part of the agenda to condition your mind when it comes to the science part of it? There's a group of scientists going all the way to Madame Curie. Remember Madame Curie? There is an agenda called the particle agenda. What is CERN doing in Switzerland right now?
They're building a big atom smasher.
Splitting particles, atoms, or creating new.
That
They're
giant
building
machine.
an atom smasher.
Let me tell you what they're doing.
Drilling a hole to the center of the earth.
But why?
They want to get to a different realm.
No, they won't.
The particle agenda has been debunked scientifically. Albert Einstein theory has been debunked. Enter CERN, a coalition of the majority of the nation in this world. They come up with this instrument, 17 miles long. What they do is two opposite of instrument in a circular form. They speed it up as fast as they can, and then they collide them. Why? They're telling you and I, by doing so, they can discover a particle called the particle of God. Now they're using the name of God to deceive you and I right in front of our eyes.
Holy cow.
They're trying to prove the existence. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
They're using science to prove to you and I the existence of God under the disguise of them searching for a particle called the particle of God. Google out the name CERN. You'll be real surprised what it actually means. Demonic as it can be. But we don't bother doing our research.
Wow.
It's not what it seems, folks.
No, I did a little research on it a while back, and it was really weird. They had these big, like, it was almost demonic dances and little ceremonies right there on the object itself.
Because it's tied to the word CERN. It's tied to the word CERN. CERN is an acronym. Folks, we're living at a time right now, exactly what Jesus said. You, he said, individually shall know the truth. Do your research, Proverbs 25:2. It is the glory of the kings to search the matter out. I saw Andre share with me today something about a split. What is it called, Andre?
It's the double slit experiment.
Yes. How many are familiar with that? You see, a lot of these things you and I have been told conventionally. What if I were to tell you tonight the landing of the moon was fake? If the landing of the moon is so easy, how come we haven't done it again?
I don't know.
And CERN has the Hindu goddess Shiva, who is the god of destruction, planted in front of their building.
Yes.
It's planted right there, as big
Right
as
in front of your face, under your nose. Andre?
So maybe they're covering it up. I Googled it. The Council European pour la Recherche Nuclear, which translates to European Council of Nuclear Research. I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe if I continue
Yes. Do your
looking,
research
I'll
and you'll
find
find
some.
out. You'll be real shocked.
Can you guys see the logo of CERN too? That's the Shiva, but to see the
Yeah.
logo,
Yeah.
if you
What is
really
that?
look at it, there are three sixes.
Yes.
Sixes, yeah.
And
Oh,
look, folks, nations, it says in Revelation chapter 18, verse 3 somewhere, that you're going to be deceived if you don't do your due diligent research. Look what is happening. CERN looking for the particle of God, the Pope opening the five doors. Watch this. If you coordinate the geographical locations of those five doors, you're going to come up with a picture called sigil. Sigil. Sigil is a pictogram that is used by sorcerers, by witches, to call upon the presence of Satan himself.
Thanks.
You want more?
Oh, I'm good right now.
I'm not trying to scare anybody.
No.
Mm-mm.
Bill?
Now, when you say Proverbs 25:2, I'm convinced that is why this group is reading this book right now. That's why we're into this book. This book is going to bring us to the next level of understanding and wanting to understand and break into. I'm convinced of it. I'm convinced of it. That's why we're going to read this book and we're going to understand more and different truths and God's will in a different way and how to see spiritually in God's will in his way, which is going to be unique. I'm convinced of it. I'm
I don't
convinced.
I don't think it's coincidence. I see the hands of God working in this group. He challenged you to challenge me to unpack the book of Ezekiel. We went through a little bit of challenging time in chapter 1, but we made it through. We unpacked these word trees and forests, both from Ezekiel and Enoch back to back in 1 week. Is this coincidence?
Mark 8 too.
I think not. I'm going to continue to share with you what I've discovered. To answer your question, Bill, why aren't the historians, the biblical scholars, the pastors, the priests? Simply is this, Bill. When you get complacent, that's what happens.
Same.
When you get complacent, that's what happens. This is why only one man walk on water. The other 11 stay in the boat. They all know the same man that's walking toward them. They know him as Jesus, but only one had the courage to get out of their boat to come toward him. He is the only man recorded in the history of mankind to ever walk on water other than Jesus.
The struggle that I'm having with this is all of this is I hear God calling me to not read the end of the book yet, to live my life every day and to grow and to be better. And for me, I'm following along with you guys. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to keep myself open, but I don't want to skip ahead to the end and miss everything that I have to work on today and what my testimony is and what my small ministry with a small m may be. So in answer to questions about why aren't other people doing it, I would love to believe that I'm the only one in the world that's special this way. But I think there are other people that we're not being ignorant, we're not being complacent. We're trying to work on who we are today, how we grow, how we become the person that God wants us to be without jumping to the end. So that's just my personal commentary.
Yeah, everybody's on a different path, right? Let's talk about all of us here. Besides me and Stephen and Frank and perhaps Sean, right? The rest of you guys are still working, right? That's 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, if not more. You're not going to have the time to do what I did.
Even if I was retired, I wouldn't have them.
Good answer, Billy.
I mean, I'm not saying it in a bragging and boasting manner. That's the truth. This is why I'm here 2 in the morning. I'm here 5 in the morning. I'm here 10 in the evening.
And we appreciate what you do for us, Paul. I know that.
Amen.
For sure.
Amen.
Thank you, Paul.
Billy's right. Even if we weren't working, we probably couldn't do it close to the level that you do it. And that's the truth.
Well, this is why I've been helping you guys to see the Bible. It's not what it seems to be. Now you're making a progress. Now you're beginning to have this attitude, this perception. I cannot process the Bible just literally. And you've seen that again and again and again. So now by God's sovereignty, we're moving on to the next level, this book. Brian.
Just an accolade to you, Paul. I was a lady, one of my clients. I share a lot of stuff with her that we talk about in our studies. And she calls me. We talk once a week now and study together a little bit. And she has a degree like you do, Paul. And she said, I didn't know. She said this to me. I mean, literally, she said, I have a degree in theology, a couple of them. And she said, and I never got as deeply into the Bible and understood it until I met you. And all I did was share a lot of things that I learned in this group. And she said, it's opened my eyes. And she shares it with her Bible study group. So I just thought that was a really cool thing that here our group has a root that we don't even really know about. And they're learning what we're learning just because I know her and I'm in this group with you guys and Paul. I just thought that was really neat.
Well, thank you. But I always say this, right? What I do, you can do it also. Sean.
I was just going to say, I just look at this all as a blessing, and some of it I don't understand as well as you do, obviously, but it's okay because
Yes.
then when I start doing research, I find these little things. Like when I read the Ezra earlier today and stuff, I really was into that reading. You know what I mean? It's just, I feel like we discover all these little things and the connections that come together, and so I don't know, whatever bits and pieces of it I do get and stick on with our little gems that I'm
Yes.
glad I learned about,
Yeah, well, what I'm doing right here is challenging you guys. And once you find your niche, you go on your own. That's all. You're going to be different than I am. What I'm doing right now is challenging your thinking process. Don't get comfortable. Don't get complacent. We talked about human reasoning yesterday. The greatest obstacle to your spiritual growth and maturity, this is what Paul says. The Spirit, Holy Spirit of the letter must trump the letter of the Spirit. Human reasoning puts the letter of the Spirit in front of the spirit of the letter. Why do you think God designs the Hebrew alphabet the way He did? He wants you to see beyond the letter. Maybe because I wasn't born here, this becomes second nature to me when it comes to thinking process, when it comes to picking up stuff. The fact of the matter is I grew up when it comes to demons and stuff like that. It's a daily reality to me. Coming here, I realize we don't look at that like a reality. You talk to people and you see demon, they're going to say, you need to go to an asylum.
Right.
That is the fact of life here. The ancients, like I said, they look at the star. They don't look at it just as a star. They believe it's a representation of something else. Why do you think they built structures like pyramids The pagodas. You don't think they built it just for the sake of building it, do you? I'll tell you right now why those structures are built. Those are portals for them to go back and forth, earth and wherever they are. What do you think Genesis tells you and I? Watch this now. It says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? But the first thing it says by Moses that God created is light. Am I right?
Yes.
All agree on that?
Yes.
But we're missing the most important thing. You know what's the most important thing? With light being the first thing God created, it's how He created that light. He spoke it into existence. Up until now, tonight, we've been conditioned to believe in this thing called the speed of light. Nothing can be faster than the speed of light. Am I right, Andre? So I'm calling Andre because he's an engineer. So he's academically trained when it comes to science. But if you go back to what Moses tells us in Genesis, God created light by speaking it out. What that tells me is sound is faster than the speed of light. Human reasoning would say, no, Paul, that cannot be true. Well, how did light come to be existed? He spoke it.
Well, couldn't that be like poetic? You know, because like scientifically, it's probably like a very observable thing, and maybe it depends on what we call sound and what we call light. I mean, couldn't that just be a poetic thing?
Well, to answer your question, I'm going to ask Stephen here, a retired firefighter, something. In all your career as a firefighter fighting fire, you've been told that the best way to fight fire is with water, right?
Yeah, I
The,
guess. Yeah.
the days are coming. Sound will replace water to fight fire. It's been done in a miniature scale already as we speak. That goes back to Genesis. He spoke light into existence. This thing called telepathy, people transferring their thought from one mind to another, that is no longer a myth these days. It's been proven to be actually happening. And it all comes down to this shape, cone. Why do you think the pyramid is in the shape that it is? Like a cone. Why do you think all these Buddhist temples, Hindu temples look like a cone? It has something to do with sound. It has something to do with a portal. They have the technology then, and we're just now catching up with that technology. The days are coming when they're going to fight fire with sound, not water.
They're
Chris?
doing that. They're doing that warfare now. Countries. They're putting sound into other countries where it's actually making them confused and crazy, like literally insane. And it's all by sound waves that you can't hear. You can't tangibly tell that there's a sound wave going on, but there is one going on.
Yeah.
It's warfare. Sound is warfare.
Like subliminal, right?
Yeah, and then that concert, that one, I don't know who it was, but Scott or something, I don't know. But he opened the portal on stage with these sounds of boom, like low bass sounds, and then he had this spherical thing going on. 6 people died in that concert. So many people were saying that they felt this darkness and this thing on them. There was a black thing on them. You can open portals, man.
Well, how many days God created everything?
6.
6.
6. How many musical notes?
I'm gonna guess 6.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. It's a repeat of the first note. 7. What if I were to tell you, hidden in those musical notes, every one of them, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si. God, if you look back at the way He created everything in 6 days and the parallels and the patterns, I always say this to you guys, parallels, pattern, hidden in those musical notes are revelations to healing, revelation to rejuvenation. You just said the guy cranked up that sound where people that were listening to it, they got confused, they got riled up, they got agitated. You bring down the waves of the sound lower to where it harmonizes with your soul.
Chris, take this one.
No, it's all
You got to
you,
take
dog.
this one.
It's all you. It's all you.
The days are
Listen,
coming.
we just had a discussion this weekend. We went on like a little journey, almost a beautiful spiritual journey, and that's one of the thing I came to was the numerical value of the Hebraic letters and how they also represent a musical note. And this was played on the harp to King David. And the rabbi was saying, we can actually speak words to God through the tones of the music. It got deeper. I'm just scratching the surface on it. But
What
it
do you
tied right, it was incredible. It was
why
incredible.
why do you think the monks chanted?
Yeah, that's all coming together now.
They knew a secret in chanting, Andre.
It's also interesting how hearing is our last sense to go. There definitely is something
Yes.
with sound.
Yes.
But can you call that notes instead of sound?
No, it has to be sound because later on I'll prove to you. If you have a shape of triangle, square, and let's say you have a piece of metal in the form of square, and you cause the sound to such a degree, combination with air, to where that triangle is affected by the sound, and you're going to see the impact and the effect of that increase of frequency of the sound to that piece of metal. Sounds are powerful if you know how to utilize it. So the rocks and the hard rock, the groups of the band, right? And you add to that the lyrics that are nonsensical, demonic. What is it doing to your soul? On the other spectrum of that, calm, smoothing sound, it affects your soul. It gives you peace. It is just a known fact. You can research this out tonight if you want. I believe soul, the note soul, has to do with healing. So right there is a connection. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you look back at what God created on each and every day right there. And the symbolism in the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is Shabbat. Shabbat is rest, right? So anyway, we went a little bit too far right here. But let me close with Jubilees. Jubilees chapter 23. By the way, in verse 9 right here, the last verse of this chapter, I gave you all the biblical references. John 3:16, John 4:14, John 5:11-24, John 10:27-28, Psalm 37:18. The last one, Jubilees. We're going to close with this. I'll read it for all of us right here. Right? Jubilees chapter 23. If you have it, you can read along. Verses 27 to 29. And the days shall begin to grow many, and increase amongst those children of men, till their days draw nigh to 1,000 years. And to a greater number of years than before was the number of days. And there shall be no old man, no one who is not satisfied with his days. For all shall be as children and youths, and all their days shall they complete and live in peace and in joy. And there shall be no Satan, not nay any evil destroyer, for all their days shall be days of blessings and healings. Does that not sound like the promise Jesus gives us, whether in
Amen.
heaven
Yes.
or in the 1,000-year reign? So, in this chapter 4 and chapter 5, right, seasons to Enoch were more than just seasons. Sea and rivers to Enoch were more than just water. And he connected the season, winter, summer, water, with the ancient worshiping of their gods. And then he's telling you and I, don't be like the ungodly. Notice the rebuke on the ungodly. Two things that he rebuked the ungodly in this chapter: the words that come out of their mouth and the way that they think. It's the same warning to you and I. Human reasoning and death and life are in the power of the tongue. Whichever fruit you love, you will live by it. You love speaking death, it's going to become a curse to you. You're cursing yourself. Why? Bless yourself. Bless others. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to get a glimpse. That's exactly what it is, a glimpse. You delight in opening our eyes of understanding to see. Even Paul, the great apostle, tells us, at this point, he said, presently, we only see limitedly. But you never put a stop to anybody who desires the way Enoch did. Help us. Help us not to give up. Help us to press on. Help us to see what awaits us beyond what we can think, ask, or imagine. Meanwhile, help us to continue to be diligent and vigilant in searching the matter out. For you promise us it is the glory of the kings to search the matter out. We ask this in Jesus' name for your glory, honor, and praise through your Holy Spirit. Amen.
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 Amen.